because I had a lot of squealing. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing my March wrap-up. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, y'all, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is the best book that you read in March. Add to my TBR, you know, because clearly it needs it. Alright, so this month went better than I expected in some regards, but also worse in others. And I'm not just talking about the fact that my grandma broke her hip. She's doing fine now, I promise. That was just the reason that I actually missed an upload last Friday. It's rare, but it happens occasionally. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into my stats. Starting at the top, I read 19 books and manga this month. Across those, I read 4,421 pages. That does include converting audiobook hours to pages, but when it comes to audiobook hours, I listened to just over 42 hours this month. First off, that's a really good number, but at the same time, it's not like so much that it overtook what I was reading this month. Because again, I do want to continue trying to prioritize reading with my eyeballs if I can. My average rating was fantastic with 4.05 stars. Wow, that's so good. But that said, I did unfortunately have one DNF. When it comes to my genre stats, unsurprisingly, thanks to March Manga Madness, I was kind of focused on a specific one. So I read one fantasy, one historical, one horror, 12 manga. You know, part of me was trying to shoot for a 30 and 30, but I wasn't holding my breath about that. 12 is still a really solid number for me. I read 2 nonfiction books, 1 romance, and then 1 sci-fi. I'm actually filming this on March 31st, so hopefully I'll be finishing a second sci-fi novel tonight, but I won't be talking about it in my wrap-up, which is kind of a good segue for me to remind you that I'm only going to be reviewing books that I didn't talk about in specific videos. I had a good few themed reading vlogs come out this month, including my feminist reading vlog, reading from 5-star authors, 1 March Manga Madness vlog, and then a author taste test. So if you're intrigued for thoughts on any of the books in these thumbnails, then go check them out. I'll put links to all of those in the description down below. Back to stats. When it comes to little goals I keep for myself, I unfortunately did not finish a Doorstopper. That's a book that is 450 pages or more. I started into one. I didn't finish it quite yet. And then from looking at my genre breakdown, you can see I obviously read a nonfiction book as well as a comic or manga. Next, when it comes to series, I started into one, unfortunately, but I read 10 continuations. Yeah, a lot of those were thanks to manga. And then I actually finished out 2 series. I did not buy any new books in March, and I read 6 books from my owned TBR. All right, and with all of that out of the way, let's officially dive into the reviews for the books I read this month. I think I'm just gonna be a little lazy and go chronologically from when I last finished to the ones that I read at the beginning of the month. So starting at the top, I read numerous volumes of Library Wars. Story and art is done by yumi. I am up to volume 6 now. I actually kind of did like a first line challenge, and this won out in my March Manga Madness vlog that I did earlier this month. Put a link to that up above. This one ended up winning out. I started into it. I thought this was like a sci-fi action series, which is really funny to me because I don't know why. I didn't freaking read that it literally says right there, shoujo beat manga. Shoujo is a series that is specifically geared towards teenage girls, meaning majority of the time, there's a really heavy romance element. And I did not pick up on that until the second volume when I realized just how prevalent the romance actually is in this series. So this does take place in a slightly dystopian future where there is a breakdown between the national and state governments in Japan. The national government is trying to ban books. However, within the state governments, libraries are working to try and fight against this. And so we follow a main character who is working for the library task force to protect books. Obviously, you can see I got pretty invested because I blasted through 3 volumes of this in a single day. Yeah, that's going to be in a Patreon reading vlog that has not quite come out yet, but if you're intrigued, I'll put a link to my Patreon down below because I had a lot of squealing. I will say this does feel like it's aged. Like I can tell this was written in the early 2000s. The main character can be kind of a moron. She's a bit of a ditz, but at the same time, like she's so courageous. She's got a lot of heart and you can't help but root for her and admire her. She just wants everybody who loves books to be able to love them without, you know, the government trying to get involved. It is a very relevant topic right now, unfortunately. However, she starts to develop a little bit of a romance with her instructor, Dojo. And I have been having very complicated feelings about it because unfortunately there's a recurring gag of him smacking her whenever she's kind of going off the rails and he needs to pull her back in. I don't love that. I will say, given the fact that he is her superior, I'm impressed that the power imbalance between them doesn't feel controlling. Like, he doesn't feel as though he's utilizing his station to influence her. If anything, he's trying to ensure she doesn't start having feelings for him, but he's doing a terrible job. I like the actual plot itself. I wish it was a little bit more relevant. The romance is so silly and so entertaining, and there's a lot of very funny moments throughout the series. For example, Dojo's best friend knows that he has feelings for the inferior, and he has the most hilarious comments, and then her best friend and roommate thinks Dojo is just like the dreamiest guy ever and cannot fathom why the main character gets frustrated and doesn't like him. It's so entertaining. For the first 4 volumes, I've given every one of these 4 stars. Like I said, I'm really enjoying the series. Then there's the 5th volume where there's a side romance introduced with Dojo's best friend, and I hated it so much. Remember how I was talking about the power imbalance between the main characters and how I was impressed that that hasn't been getting overdone and frustrating me? Yeah, instead it's like the author took all of the possible issues I could have had with the main romance and just put them on the side romance. There was in fact one comment that was kind of ableist because the love interest character for him is deaf. Insinuates the fact that she is hard of hearing means she can't have a romantic relationship. It was really weird, especially given the fact that like there's this drastic age difference between the two of them, and it's like that should be a problem, not the fact that she's deaf. So for majority of this volume, I was so uncomfortable, cringing my way through. It's even more frustrating because the bonus chapter in this one has Dojo being possessive and having to protect Kashihara in like the silliest but cutest way possible. Ugh, I loved the bonus chapter in this one. Everything else, oh my god, I could have done without this. I wish it wasn't here. 2 stars. Next up, also for March Manga Madness, I've been continuing on with the series mieruko-chan by Tomoki Izumi. This is kind of a slice of life horror manga where we're following this girl who suddenly has the ability to see ghosts, but she is doing everything in her power to not let the ghosts know she can see them because she's terrified of what will happen. And so it's kind of this very funny ongoing gag, but we're actually diving into the plot now of her trying to figure out why can she suddenly see these ghosts? What do they mean? What can they do? Are they actually dangerous? Are some of them okay? And we're getting to meet other characters who can see them as well. So I continued on with volume 4 and volume 5. I'm continuing to really, really enjoy the series. So volume 4 saw a reemergence of a character who I really, really enjoyed and wasn't sure if we were going to see her again. And then volume 5 actually introduced us to this new, creepy, possibly nefarious other medium. And I'm so intrigued on what's going to happen there. So both of these came out to 4 stars. I'm really enjoying the series. It's a lot of fun. And while I do wish the plot was developing a little bit more in each volume, overall, I am happy that like we're starting to get little tiny bits of answers. More questions keep popping up at the same time. And I'm so sucked in. Like, I'm definitely going to continue reading this one. I'm scared for whenever I eventually catch up because this is actually an ongoing series, which I did not realize when I started. Next up, I read The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlap. This was actually for my Geek Squad book club, which is hosted on my Patreons. Initially, I picked this up thinking it was a historical horror story, but really, I would say this is a historical romance that has some gothic vibes going on. So in the story, we were following James, who has recently started medical school in Edinburgh. And although he has natural talent in this area, is absolutely fascinated by it, unfortunately, some family drama has required his funds to get cut off. And so now he is desperate for money, desperate to continue his education, and thus ends up working with some body snatchers. Because at this point, there's a lot of people going to medical school, but there are not enough bodies being donated for them to practice on. This is actually based in some true history, and so that element was very interesting. But along the way, he ends up developing a bit of a romance with fellow body snatcher Nai. I did go into this expecting there to be more of a mystery history, but honestly, the queer romance was what got me invested, and it's what kept me invested the entire way through. This was really interesting because it is kind of educational about this like very niche area of history, and it does have some true crime elements woven throughout it that I could appreciate as well. But it's also mixed with this like swoony and fun queer romance. It's such a juxtaposition, but it worked so well. I think Dunlap did a really phenomenal job of developing James, the main character, and also slowly exploring 𝗖cie, even though we don't ever see through his eyes. James just felt very well-rounded, and by the end of the book, he really did just hop off the page. The romance, the dynamic between these two, so much fun. So good. Atmosphere of this was so good. Every time I picked it up, I was truly transported into this setting. But I will say, I would have loved a little bit more of the gory medical scenes, because we have one in particular that I think Dunlap wrote so well. And then maybe a little bit more when it comes to like the gothic atmosphere as well. I felt like Dunlap was really good at writing both of those, but they didn't really have enough moments to showcase that writing. I also could have done without the familial drama being so at the forefront for the last half of the book. It just wasn't very interesting to me, especially with how the book closes out. I just don't feel like it was really needed. Instead, I wish that page time would have been dedicated to the serial killer element of the plot, because I mean, I was so interested in that. That was a big part of why I originally picked this book up. It just didn't get as much attention as I was expecting. Even still though, really enjoyed this one. But final note, so weird, the physical book and the audiobook are drastically different. Like, not just word choice, but entire scenes are swapped based on whether or not you're reading the physical book or the audiobook, which I'm still not over, and I'm still not sure why that is. So strange. It didn't really affect my enjoyment of the story overall, but it just got me really curious and did take me out of it a few times. Really, really liked this one. Still would give it 4.5 stars. Absolutely going to be keeping it on my shelves. I also listened to the audiobook of Victorian Psycho by Virginia feito. I think that may be how you pronounce this. I believe this was the Layer Bloody read for Jane Agaton's Patreon. And I'm really glad this got picked, because I don't know when else I would have picked it up, but it was a weird and really fun ride. I think the title of this actually kind of perfectly encapsulates it. It is set in the Victorian times, and you are following a woman who is a psychopath as she just started a job as a governess for these really rich people who have a lot of their own issues and are also terrible, but like not quite in the same way. This was a wild and weird time where like I never knew what was gonna happen next. It was gross, it was funny, it was strange. I can't really pinpoint another book I have read was comparable to this. It was a weird time, but by the end of it, I really liked it, and I think it was a satisfying ending. It was a really strange ride, but I actually think I would be willing to buy a copy of this, because I kind of want to reread it. But it was 4 stars because every time I was listening to the audiobook, I was locked in. Next up, I talked about half of this book in my feminist reading vlog, which came out earlier this month. I'll put a link to that one in the cards. But I finished out She Found It at the Movies, edited by Christina Newland, and figured I'd slide in my last few thoughts here since now I officially finished it. I would rate this like 3.75 stars. The high side is a 4 star. That was roughly about what my average rating was after having gone through and rated every single essay. So this is a collection of essays by different authors talking about desire and sex and how they learned about it in movies, how movies have affected their experiences with each of these things, how movies are able to represent their experiences. It was a very interesting book overall, and I definitely would like to read more about this niche film critique section, but it was kind of a roller coaster ride throughout, because there were some chapters that I really, really enjoyed them, and there were others where I felt very meh, or there were a few that I didn't particularly like. Some chapters felt like they were more based in the person's personal experiences. Some were more focused on one piece of media, whereas others had a main topic and they went across multiple movies. Some of them utilized external evidence. Some of them talked about a specific phenomenon in society or the reaction to a specific movie. When it was broader, I tended to like it more, but the more specific, more personal ones, I had a harder time getting getting invested in. Maybe not invested, but like they just weren't as memorable to me. They weren't nearly as interesting as the ones that had a broader scope, that had more to talk about when it came to like this movie's impact on the larger scale. Even still though, I did really enjoy this. Like I said, this is a topic that I do want to try and revisit. I did add a few books to my TBR off of this one, and I'm also a little intrigued just to like read more from some of these film critics specifically, if perhaps they come out with other books. So like I said, all in all, like a 3.75. I'll just go ahead and round it up for a 4-star. Finally, one of the first books I read this month was *Cleat by Meryl Wilsner. This is a sapphic romance following these two women who are on a professional soccer team. One of them is a veteran. She has been playing soccer professionally since she was roughly 16, and the other is the newbie to the team who's getting a lot of attention. And they end up striking up a bit of a friends with benefits situation that slowly becomes a little bit more complicated. Really liked this overall, but I think my biggest issue with this book was the ending. And that's so funny to say when it comes to a romance book. You would think I need a really solid ending for me to enjoy it as much as I did. I think Wilsner really killed it in the character creation of these two, and in the beginning romance moments. I was just so engaged with them and so fascinated by watching their dynamic evolve that even though I didn't love how this ended, I had such positive feelings about the relationship overall that I couldn't not still rate it highly. By the end of the book, I felt like both of them were leaping off the page. There were so many little details that Wilsner would weave into the story that would continue adding to both of these characters throughout the entire book, and that's always very impressive. There's some really good neurodiversity rep in this. I can personally speak to the ADHD rep. I do think that was well presented. There is also some autistic rep in here as well. That one I can't speak to personally, but I have seen relatively positive response to it in reviews. The banter in the beginning was so fun. There's like these really great moments of jealousy with Grace, the veteran character. Phoebe is a giant flirt, so there's tons of that. And then the spice was spicing. All in all, like I said, I really enjoyed the relationship between these two. Not the pet names though. I would really like the baby girl thing to please. I don't like it anyway, but I also really did not feel like it fit these characters. So every time it was used, I was immediately taken out. I will say soccer is not really a sport I've ever been particularly interested in, but Wilsner wrote it in a way that at the very least did keep me invested and had me rooting for their team to succeed. They gave us enough to showcase how important soccer was to both of these women's lives, but I don't feel like it overtook the story at any point. I didn't feel like this book ever became a soccer book. In Phoebe in particular, there's also this great balance between like competition with the other players while also developing friendships with them that I enjoyed as well. And this book was delightfully queer when it came to the side characters, but I do feel like pretty much all of the side characters were very one note. Downside though, because I don't really know a lot about soccer, I have no idea what the timeline of this book is. No freaking clue. I guesstimated a few months, but like this could have taken place over a few weeks and I would have had no idea because it really felt like the passage of time was only acknowledged based on soccer. Like I said at the beginning, the fall down for this book was in the ending because miscommunication is utilized so heavily. I feel like it is partially done in a very realistic way because of certain elements of these characters. That does not change the fact that it was driving me insane. Both of them had a lot of personal drama that was going on that I think allowed me to excuse the fact that they weren't talking for so long, even though they had jumped into bed together pretty quickly. But by the end of the book, again, I was like wanting to put my head through a wall because it was just becoming way too much. But finally, because of so many little things that have been laid out in each character's backgrounds, it felt like this book was really rushed to finish out. I mean, there were a few things that never really got wrapped up and I still had questions about them. I guess it does make sense that like obviously not everything is going to be resolved in like this few day period, but it just felt like maybe Wilsner should have cut down on some of the side elements a little bit so that the ending itself would have felt more satisfying, more cohesive. Like I said, I really liked this overall, but because of how this closed out, like I couldn't give it 5 stars. I'm still gonna give give it like 4.5. I still did have a really good time with this book, and I did really enjoy majority of my reading experience. I just wish maybe there was a little bit of editing when it came to the ending. Okay, and on that note, that is officially it for my wrap up today, y'all, but thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, why don't we go with the soccer ball emoji and leave me one in the comments down below. I have all my socials linked in the description if you're interested in keeping up with what I am reading. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!